Thank you for having me. I'm going to talk about a project that we have called NORDi, which is a part of NSD. But before I start, a little practical information. I have a stand afterwards, and during the test drive yesterday of the roll-up banner, it broke. So if you come there, I want you to imagine the right one next to me. NSD has been around as a sort of national research infrastructure since the 70s, long before the term research infrastructure was coined. And in the beginning of the 2000s, we were sort of transitioned into a limited company owned by the Ministry of Education and Research. We're not funded directly by them, but we're fully owned by the ministry. And we have this mandate, and so it is our job to perform services for the Norwegian research sector. So that's our biggest and only mandate, really. We do a lot of things. We have a big portfolio. We're around 100 people, and you may have heard of some of these. You mentioned the data protection official for research and various other more or less well-known activities that we have. We have a lot of, I wouldn't say partners, but a lot of actors that we collaborate with more or less intimately in Norway and internationally. Mark mentioned the Norwegian Research Council and their mild enforcement of open access policies. I think we're one of their instruments going forward in this. Actually, it's been part of the agreements to get funding from the Research Council for certain types of data for a long, long time to archive the data with NSD. But it's been very mildly enforced. I think one of the reasons is that it has to be user-friendly. The usability has to be there. It has to be convenient before they enforce it further. We're linked between research and the data protection official in Norway. We disseminate data from Statistics Norway. And we also have an agreement with the National Archive, or Riksarkivet, which means that we have a perspective which goes way beyond 10 years and 100 years, so more like an infinite perspective on storing and making research data available. We also have several international links. The most important one is CESTA, which is a consortium of European social science data archives, which is where NSD is the Norwegian service provider appointed by the ministry. And each European country, or many of them, have appointed institutions to sort of represent data archiving and research infrastructure for the social sciences there in Europe. So we have this sort of, we operate in this landscape. So NORDi is about, it's at the heart of NSD. It's a project that we got funding for a couple of years ago from the Norwegian Research Council to strengthen ourselves. But it's not anything new, really. It is a lot of new things, but it's still at the very heart of what we have been doing all these years. So what is it? It's quite the big project, the way we look at it. It's a 5-year project. It's a fantastic opportunity for us. Been working there for a long time to finally be able to lift NSD up to where we think we belong. And what it does is that it enables us to sort of improve not only our presence, but services to match the requirements in 2017 and beyond. Through the most important thing, increased communication with researchers and research institutions. Technology, which is a very important part in this, because as a 40-year-old institution with lots of data and an early adopter of the web, we have a lot of legacy systems to deal with, a lot of legacy data. So we need sort of, and it's really hard to lift that during operational phase. So we sometimes, from time to time, need some additional funding and resources and focus to lift the platforms. It's not really interesting to talk about technology today. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm a technologist. But it is also a means to free up resources to actually do the communication that we have to be doing increasingly with the research communities. And also to do the collaboration with other partners in Norway and internationally. Sort of this networking aspect that Mark was talking about in the first talk, that there are APIs, it is a network, and you have to be able to tap into that and offer things into that. And that's also where technology plays a part. You have to be, in order to be responsive, you have to be on level technologically and not being weighed down by too much legacy systems. The project is organized in 7 different sub-projects or modules or work packages. I'm going to talk in detail about some of them today. And my responsibility, beyond being tech lead of the project, is the so-called data curation platform, the sort of ecosystem that data and metadata are imported into and curated in, preserved within. And this is sort of, it's a way of organizing the work. Everything is related to everything we find. And but I want you to maybe notice that we have sort of 2 main interfaces here. The research is one of them, the most important one, I guess. But we also have a very important interface towards institutions. So they are 2 different actors and users of NSD with different requirements, sure, overlapping, but also very different. And before I talk about the packages, I want to talk about some of the principles that we are working, that we are aligning the work with. One of them is that we design, we implement a lot of services, we can call it, in this project. Abstract services may consist of several smaller ones, but they have APIs. And usually they have a human interface where research can use, web interface, or something like that. But they also have a machine interface that institutions can use them in one way or another. And so we can also take part in this network, not only on the read side, but also people can consume the things that we have and upload things to us digitally without human intervention. So that's one principle. So all our applications build on the same APIs that external actors would use. And then we have this, again, this researcher sort of perspective on things, and then we have the institutional perspective. They're a little bit different, so we usually have to sort of have both those things in mind when we design the services, because these APIs, they perform different or fulfill different needs. And then we have this networking thing where we are chatting with other APIs, Kestin, UNINETT, around the country, around Europe, around the globe, and other apps can chat with ours and our services. And this is very sort of fundamental to the project. Another fundamental thing, which also explains why I'm not going to showcase that much today, is that we are, this is a 5-year project, so we are releasing things early, improving them incrementally in contact with the users. So we have a couple of services that has surfaced already. You will see screenshots of them today. But I'm pretty sure that in 4 years' time they will be completely different and much better than they are today, even though I can say that they are pretty good as well already. So, the module 1, or work package 1, is about data archiving. So this figure here is from a report written here at the University of Oslo, the data explosion, a couple of years ago. And it talks about these 4 levels of archiving. Individual file handling, institutional repositories and collaboration, like the work area, national archives. NSD is actually mentioned here, along with NORDi from UNINETT Sigma, and then discovery services. So when we are talking about archiving depositing services, we are talking about really potentially many things, but we are focusing on these 2 layers of this, and that's been our primary focus until now. So we have this national archive role. So I'm going to talk about this. This is what it looks like when you try to archive a new data set from your project. We have an ongoing also side project here that's talked about that deals with data management plan, following up especially projects funded by the Research Council of Norway from the beginning, from the funding. Sort of offering services and guidance around data management, having services that they can use along the way, training and so on. But this is a more generic archiving interface that has some integration points with Kristin, which is the sort of current research information system in Norway. So you can bring in your information from that system if you already have added it there and so on. So we're trying to not minimize the work that has to be done in this. So the other integration point is that we can log in with a national single sign-on system or federated authentication system, pull in information from Kristin and other systems. Data protection official for research was mentioned. A lot of projects are born in those kind of systems because you have to get the permissions right even to sort of have a project. That's type of information that you don't want to duplicate and register over and over. So this is the part of the networking we're talking about. And when you deposit data to NSD, you deposit it into a sort of an active curation and active preservation area. So when you deposit files, data set to us, our people will work with you and ask you sometimes questions in order to sort of get the quality and the formats and the metadata up to a level that we know it can be not only found, but also used in a distant future. So there is a sort of continuous effort going on, both manually and automatically, to do active curation, active preservation. So this is immediately behind the scenes when you upload data to us. And obviously you get these things that you would expect today. And also, we found that we have guidance on licensing and sort of intellectual property. The sooner we can get in position to discuss those things with the researchers, the better. So we avoid mangling together your own data with data with too strict licensing or commercial data that sort of prevents you from sharing it. So a lot of soft guidance in this to really improve the situation, we think. The data curation platform is the module that I'm personally responsible for. And that's sort of what brings together the tools and resources that we use to curate the data. Documentation, anonymization, format shifting, all this. And these tools and these mechanisms are also something that we increasingly would like to offer to researchers, not to sort of burden them with that, but on the contrary, to ease the situation, so and offer solutions if they need them. Sort of to tap into some of the curation and resources and the network that we use internally when we curate the data. It's not because we don't want to do it, but it really frequently is the researchers are the best, the people nearest to the data, and if they have the tools and resources that we have, they probably will be doing better job and an easier job. And then, as a software developer, as a technologist, we have this this mismatch between what we as software engineers expect in terms of workflow control when we work with our data, which is the code, and we surround us with all these wonderful tools that help us do our job. And we work alongside, at NSD we are 30 developers. We work alongside the data curators and data scientists. And they don't have this by far to the extent that we do. And one of the sort of ambitions of the data curation platform is to sort of mirror many of the things that we take for granted in software engineering and transfer them to to the data curators, which are have this kind of situation. Slightly better than this, but that's essentially the case. The workflow support is really important for us. And we think also in this case, it will leak into, or it will not leak into, it will be also offered to a certain extent to researchers and users of NSD, not only our staff. The data preservation platform is the part of this infrastructure that you will only notice when it doesn't work. That's sort of the boring part. We have all these applications for consumption uploading on top. We have very sophisticated metadata APIs with administrative records, with discovery and administrative metadata, and also domain-specific and sometimes very deep and detailed metadata, sort of to guide the understanding, but also the active curation and active preservation part, because a lot of the metadata that we have are machine readable, machine actionable. So we can actually use the metadata to curate and nurture the data. And on the bottom, we have sort of data in very many forms, files, whatnot. Sometimes in the cloud, sometimes within our own institution. Sometimes data that we have metadata records for will be in TSD, sometimes they will be somewhere else. But everything, we have this notion of metadata that you really can't get to the data without going through the metadata. So the metadata is the authoritative sort of layer around data. We have our discovery service. It's another module. We have a lot of data at NSD, mostly socio-economic, and some of it goes back to the 19th and 18th century. And what we're doing here is to try to offer better findability of our own catalog, essentially, and the data that has been deposited, as well as data we have collected in other scenarios. And this is also API-driven, of course. We have search engines that walks around and sort of harvests our own metadata, external metadata to some extent, and the search index or the search engine is exposed through an API that can be used by our own discovery applications and also metadata aggregators and sort of European level or global solutions. And the structured and deep and detailed metadata that we have allows us to build lots of different bridges between data that perhaps cannot be sort of identified without that kind of metadata. So we have invested a lot in metadata and documentation for many years, also standardization. So we have this ability to, I think, link data in new forms and ways that hasn't, or that is really difficult to do without this. So that's really something to watch. We're having a version out now, but it's sort of just a subset of our collection. We have a question?
Yeah. Are you applying international standards for metadata?
Yeah, we are applying. Okay, sorry. The question was, do you apply standards to the metadata or international standards? Yes, we predominantly use something called DDI, which is a Data Documentation Initiative, which is it came from the social sciences to document survey data and to some extent statistical data about individuals and companies, regions, but it's sort of generalizing. So it's much, much more detailed than, for instance, Dublin Core or DCAT and those kind of things. But we're broadening the picture, but standardization, and also, standardized structure, but also standardization of content across European partners. We work a lot with that to sort of try to harmonize where it can be done to sort of leverage the collections in also European context. And then now we're going to talk a little bit about those modules that are not being that has not really started in a substantial way yet. The data access platform. We have a lot of data that can be downloaded. Some of the data usages we have is much more liberal than TSD, but yet not extremely liberal. So you have to sign, for instance, non-disclosure agreements and so on to get access to data. If you're a student, your supervisor has to sign documents in order for you to get them. And we're working with trying to automate this as well, and use digital signature solutions provided in Norway. A lot of interesting ideas flowing around here. We are working with another project that I'm also responsible for technically, which is about doing sort of indirect research on register data about Norwegian individuals, where we have a web interface, but where the analytical outputs are anonymized on the fly. So we are sort of seeing that we can use some of that technology and patterns, and also in our own dissemination platform. We have something called, which really was targeting institutions that call us for activity reports. How many projects have applied for data protection, the data protection official for permissions? How many have archived the data? What's going on with researchers from our institution? Mark showed some of that. And we're working on that as well, but also on the individual level. So the researcher's profile page, if you want, with statistics and so on. And we think, again, we can bring in and aggregate information from others, and others can get information from us as well. But this is something that we are talking a lot with institutions to learn much more about, because at this point it's too speculative on our side what the exact needs are. So we are spending a lot of time traveling around, talking to institutions about this. What are their needs? And they're very, very varying. And then we have, again, the last sort of module, which is very important, a training module. And we know that nationally there's a lot of good sort of local resources and local work going on. This seminar is an example of that, but there's also carpentry courses and around the library's research support. So we would like to be offering things that can support that and complement that, and not sort of get in the way of that. So we are also now literally 3 people calling around Norway to sort of identify the gaps, what do they need from us, and how can we help improve the situation by training researchers, students, and also train the trainers in metadata literacy and privacy. So we're now 1 year into the project. We have developed some services. We've learned a lot. So we see that we are able to lift ourselves up to the standard we think we should be on. But we still just started. So I'm very optimistic for the next 4 years of this project. And I think we will be much more relevant in Norway as well as internationally. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we will take you up on the offer of training the trainers and training the libraries. Here's an umbrella for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Another applause.